But it's nice, yeah.
Hello, hello, test 1, 2, 3. Test. 15 seconds later, you'll hear this. Okay. Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, that's when something embarrassing happens, like 15 seconds.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I was too, that's what I said yesterday. Over here, I remember that from Check, 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 check. Hi Denise, this is Floyd Davenport. Do you want to do a quick audio test to make sure we can hear you?
Sure. Hi, Floyd. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. And we hear you just fine. So you can go on mute and we'll probably get started here. People are still coming in. So it'll probably be another 10 minutes before we get started.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Denise, we're still getting settled, so we appreciate your patience. At some point, if you go on video, I'd like to make sure that your video comes on the stream as well.
Sure thing, no problem.
Folks, we're just getting situated here, so feel free to find a seat.
Yeah, go ahead. I think we'll go ahead and get started if everybody's ready. Denise, if you're listening, you can go ahead and turn your camera on. There she is. Hey. Okay, we got coffee coming for the panelists later, so that will happen a little bit. But in the meantime, good evening, and thanks for joining us for the kickoff of the Missouri Eclipse Expo. I'm Dan Woods with KRCU Public Radio. I'll be the moderator for this evening's program, which is titled Get Ready for the 2023 and 2024 Solar Eclipses. I'd like to welcome our audience here in the University Center Ballroom on the campus of Southeast Missouri State University here in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, as well as those who are joining us online. We are streaming this event online as well. Our goal is to get us all ready for the upcoming eclipses, and we have a distinguished panel of guests to tell us everything we need to know about Missouri's partial eclipse on October 14th and the total eclipse on April 8th. So let's meet our panel. Fred Espenak, Mr. Eclipse, is a retired astrophysicist from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. He created the NASA Eclipse website where he posted predictions on every solar and lunar eclipse from 2000 BCE to 3000 CE. He is the author of numerous eclipse books, including Road Atlas of the Total Solar Eclipse of 2024. Welcome, Mr. Eclipse, if you would. As the director of the Missouri Division of Tourism, Stephen Fouts leads a dedicated team of marketers, communicators, researchers, program managers, legislative and financial specialists, and Welcome Center ambassadors focused on promoting Missouri as one of the country's top travel destinations. Stephen, welcome to the program. And Denise Hill is up here on the screen with us, joining us virtually. She currently serves as the Communications, Outreach, and Media Relations Lead and co-leads the diversity and inclusion efforts for NASA's Heliophysics Division. Denise began her career as an educator. She has done extensive research and work in the areas of child psychology and education, specifically single gender education, brain research, gifted and talented education, behavior modification, and classroom management. Welcome, Denise. Brian Allworth spent much of his childhood in New Orleans, where he developed an interest in all things having to do with weather, especially thunderstorms and hurricanes. His first television position was at KTWO in Casper, Wyoming. He moved to the Heartland and KFES 12 in 1988. Brian is a serious outdoor photographer, specializing in medium and large format film photography. Hey, Brian, good to have you. And last but not least, Charles Fulco is a science teacher at Brooklyn Field School in New York City, a NASA Solar System Ambassador and an eclipse chaser, having observed 5 total solar eclipses and 2 annular eclipses on 4 continents. He will spend the coming year promoting eclipse awareness via his No Child Left Inside incentive. Through this program, in addition to educating schools on eclipses, he will be encouraging school administrators nationwide to permit their students to safely view the upcoming U.S. solar eclipses outdoors, not left indoors to watch them on a computer screen. Welcome, Charles. Okay, and just in case you didn't see when you came in, you can submit questions to us. There's little blue cards back there at the back, and Sarah will bring those to us during the program if something pops in your mind as we move along. We're going to start with Mr. Eclipse himself and just ask very basically, what is a solar eclipse? What do we need to know?
Is this on? Well, a solar eclipse occurs whenever the moon passes between the Earth and the sun, and some portion of its shadow sweeps across the Earth. There are actually a minimum of 2 solar eclipses every year, so they're not that exceptionally rare, but usually those are partial eclipses. A total eclipse is when the moon's central or umbral shadow sweeps across the Earth, and we only get one of those every 12 to 24 months. And at that time, when the moon shadow sweeps across the Earth, that inner shadow is only nominally 50 or 100 miles wide. So even though it produces a very long track across the Earth, it's very narrow, and less than 1% of the Earth is inside that shadow. And you've got to be inside that path of totality to see the total eclipse. That is, to see the sun completely covered by the moon, revealing the sun's fantastic solar corona.
When we hear about totality, why is that such a big deal? That's what everybody talks about.
The reason why totality is so special is because you need to cover the sun's entire bright disk in order to reveal the sun's corona. The sun's corona is about 1/1,000,000th the brightness of the sun's disk. The corona is always out there, but we can't see it because the sun is so blindingly bright. You need the moon to block out the sun's face in order to reveal that corona. And that only happens during totality, during a total solar eclipse.
Brian, so think about the eclipse and the weather. What if, we have rain that day, and you looked at the weather patterns over the past several years to kind of give us an idea what April might be like next year, right?
Yeah, so I was pleasantly impressed that I was actually invited to do this, because it occurred to a few of us in the weather department a few years ago when people started talking about this solar eclipse, total eclipse in April. It's going to be great. It's going to be beautiful. A couple of us were like, excuse me. So the last eclipse that we had in August 2017, in this part of the country, now it went all the way, I know it went right over Casper, because I thought that was a coincidence that I had actually done the weather in Casper too. A lot of people actually went out to Nebraska and Casper, that Wyoming, because of the clear skies, and also because of the fact that you're more likely to have clear weather out there than in this area. But the worst you usually get in August around here is heat, humidity, and partly cloudy. And, if you're really unlucky, you could end up with a thunderstorm. In fact, I think here in Cape Girardeau, we did pretty well on that day. I think somebody over in Southern Illinois, they had more cloud cover, just coincidentally, and they were kind of complaining because it wasn't. But anyway, so getting back to this eclipse, when it's in April, and that presents more of an issue weather-wise in this part of the country. So Cassie and I, Cassie Campbell, who's one of our newer meteorologists, we started, basically all we did at first was go back over about 40 years of April 8th climate data. And apparently it turned out we're not the only ones doing that in this part of the country.
Yeah.
So, but, we had National Weather Service data that goes back about, I think, to the year 2000, that was easily pulled up on the internet. And they had done a really good job of compiling that already. Average highs, average lows, precip. You don't really get a whole lot of detail, hourly detail, that kind of thing. But without making, this is kind of a funny story. I don't want to make it too long. But about 1985, the weather guys at KFES, before I even got there, one guy was named Don McNeely. I'm sure everybody will remember that name. Bob Reeves.
Mm-hmm.
And for the 10 o'clock news every night, they would have to write down the current temperature, current winds, precip for the day, high and low for the day, bring it into the control room. The control room types it up so that it appears on the air within the weather. But after the show, they would take that little slip of paper and they would put it on a stack. At the end of the year, they would take every single 365 of those, wrap it in a rubber band, and put it in a filing cabinet. And I
cool.
really had an aha moment. It was like a month ago. I was lying in bed. This is the absolute truth. And I went, we have all that data. We have never used that. We collected that from the year 1985 to about the year 2010. And I thought, we have literally never used that for anything. All those sheets that we saved for 40 years. So I went back in, I guess So I went back to the old filing cabinets that are back behind. I opened this drawer and, well, you know what happens to your Christmas lights when you wrap them up and put them away for about 10 years and then you take the box back out?
Mhm.
Somehow, I don't know what happened. I don't know how it does it, but so I opened the drawer, every rubber band had broken.
There you go.
Every rubber band had rotted away and broken. I had basically 15,000 sheets of paper in a cabinet. And so for about a week, I took all those papers and put them back in order and figured out which went in what year. So long story short, I went through that old data too and the new data. And it turns out on April 8th, the weather in this part of the country is extremely variable, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But that makes sense because you're going back and forth basically from spring to winter still. So early April, it can still snow, wet snow. You could have a really warm day. In fact, just real quickly, over the last 5 years, for example, we've had highs in the 40s twice on April 8th. We've had highs in the 80s once. We've had highs in the 60s and 70s the other couple of years. But I think people are probably more interested in the sky conditions. And it turns out that about a third of the time it's cloudy, about a third of the time it's clear, and about a third of the time it's partly cloudy. And about on 30% of those days, on the April 8th days that I had access to, we had precip, about a third. And so, Cassie also found a Weather Service office in Indianapolis. Apparently the track must kind of, once it moves northeast out of this area, must go up into Indiana because they're all. So what they did is they just posted satellite pictures from April 8th midday for the last like 20 years. And we looked at their satellite data and it was hard to tell because they're national pictures, but it also looked from the satellite data like about a third of the time it was completely clear, about a third of the time it was completely overcast, and about a third is about somewhere in between. So I would, if you were going to ask me what the climatology is for April 8th in this part of the country, I would say we have about a 1 in 3 chance of being clear, about a 1 in 3 chance of being cloudy, and about a 1 in 3 chance of being partly cloudy. So partly cloudy and clear is probably okay, but I just want everybody to realize that it's not obvious that it'll be a completely clear, beautiful day. We do have weather systems that come through in early April. It could be a winter-like system, which would be bad because that means overcast skies. It could be a spring system where you get a line of showers or clouds come through, and lucky it's not right during the eclipse, or it could be completely clear. So the other wild card that I looked at yesterday is that we are getting into a very strong El Nino pattern, which everybody's talking about now. El Nino for us in the spring is not a good thing. What that typically means is a stormier, wetter spring. And the National Weather Service long-range forecasters just coincidentally yesterday put out a new outlook for March, April, and May, and it has a big precip bullseye right over the mid-Mississippi Valley. So that's, I wouldn't say that's a terrible thing, but that's almost like somebody's putting their pinky on the scale and maybe tipping it a little more toward clouds and precip, maybe. So, you know, it's not a, I guess I don't want to be a doom and gloom guy. I'm just saying to be realistic.
Yeah.
You know, we'll probably be okay, but about a third of the time, we may end up with weather that may not cooperate. About a third of the time. That means 2/3 of the time we should be fine. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Brian.
Okay.
Well, and Fred and I talked on the radio earlier today, and one of the things Fred suggested was because of that variable, be ready to hop in the car and drive in case it's clear, maybe in a different place from where we're at here in Cape Girardeau, right? So just be ready to move if you need to.
Yeah, I think if you, whatever your favorite website is for looking at the forecast several days in advance, keep an eye on what the weather forecasts are for here and a couple 100 miles north or south along the eclipse path. And have a plan B. Plan B is your car has water, bottles of water, it's got drinks, you've got some sandwiches or snacks or things, and a good road atlas, and be ready to take off the day before the eclipse if the forecast for Cape Girardeau does not look good here. Be ready. It's worth making a trip several hundred miles one way to, I mean, 500 miles, you can be in Dallas, 500 miles, you can be in Cleveland. That's a big piece of territory and a much better chance of locating yourself someplace where the forecast looks good. Of course, it still doesn't guarantee you're going to have clear skies, but it opens up a big piece of geography for you to be able to relocate a day or two before the eclipse. And the forecasts generally tend to be good enough, especially if they're stable 3 or 4 days out. You watch one place day after day, and the forecast for eclipse day seems to be about the same for 2 or 3 days in a row. And you have some confidence that might be a place to go. So I recommend people think about a plan B as you approach your eclipse day and be ready to take off. Don't start thinking about it the afternoon before the eclipse day. Gee, it doesn't look like it's going to be good here. What are we going to do? Too late.
Stephen, let's talk about the tourism aspect of an event like this. It has to bring in visitors and increase hotel visits and all those times. What does that do for the state of Missouri?
Yeah, so an event like this really can be a big thing. I met a lady just earlier from the great state of Kansas who's been to 13 eclipses across the world. So people will travel for these events. And my experience with it, and I feel ill-equipped to be up here with these great scientists. I've only been to one eclipse. It was in Jeff City in Jefferson City in 2017. We started getting calls about it. And I remember this vividly. I was sitting in my office at the Division of Tourism. It was probably 2013, and somebody called and said, "What are you all doing about the eclipse?" And I said, "Dude, I'm trying to get through today. I don't know anything about 4 years from now." But we started hearing it more and more and more as time, got closer. And so what we realized was people will travel for this, and they will fill up your restaurants. Using Jefferson City and hotels, using Jefferson City as an example. If memory serves, the August 17, the 2017 eclipse was on a Monday, if memory serves. And the hotels in Jeff City, there's about 11 or 1,200 hotel rooms in Jeff City, were sold out Saturday, Sunday, and then people were there Monday. I don't know what, if people left Monday and got back on the road, but for those couple of days leading up to it, hotels in Jeff City were full. And you all know full hotels mean full restaurants, full shops, more opportunities for some economic growth in your area. So I really think it's important for your hotels, your restaurants, and your merchants to be ready for this, and for community leaders to, maybe give them a little bit of a pep talk on, hey, here's how we need to treat people when they come into town. We want them to have a good experience when they're here, because this really can be important for the local economy, especially local economy in smaller communities. Cape is obviously one of the larger cities in the region, but some of the areas to the west of here, like Poplar Bluff and West Plains and others that are going to see some totality, it can be very important for them as well.
All right, thank you. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Let me add something to that. One of the problems at a total eclipse, drawing a lot of people into the geographic area, is people don't arrive all at once. They fill into a geographic area over a matter of days, even maybe a week. So there aren't really any traffic issues. But 5 minutes after totality ends, everybody is on the highway and they want to get home, or they want to get to the airport, or whatever. So from a business perspective, for local communities, it's worthwhile encouraging guests and visitors to stay an extra day. It'll make their trip a lot more enjoyable, and it'll be a lot easier for them, a lot less congestion on the roads by staying that extra day. Just a quick anecdote. I was in Casper, Wyoming for the 2017 eclipse, and I wanted to get on the road right after the eclipse myself, but I was wiped out because I had 17 cameras and I've been up since 3 a.m. So I packed everything up, went back to my hotel at 3 in the afternoon, and went to bed instead of driving on I-25. Some friends of mine, on the other hand, only had one camera. They jumped on the highway because they had a flight out of Denver the next day. That's usually a 4-hour drive from Casper. 13 hours it took them to get to Denver because they left right after the eclipse. I, on the other hand, and no, I don't take any credit for this. I was just tired. I wanted to get on the road myself, but I went back to the hotel, went to sleep. The car was packed. I woke up about 4 a.m., got up, jumped in the car. I-25 was empty. I had the road all to myself. And I drove 1,300 miles back to Arizona on that one day. So stay an extra day.
Okay, Brian. Oh, I guess that's early today.
Well, this won't be a popular answer for this audience, but I'll be in Mexico for the eclipse at Mazatlan, simply because the weather prospects are a little bit better there. But at the end of the day, I mean, all this waving around of where the best weather is all based on climate statistics and long range looking at this type of information of how many days it was clear. The problem is on eclipse day, you don't get climate, you get weather. And it can be clear in any place along that eclipse path, including Canada, where right now it doesn't look like a good place to be for the eclipse, because the hot probability of clear skies drastically decreases as you go up into the maritime provinces. But on eclipse day, they may just draw a lucky straw, and it might be crystal clear there and cloudy across all of the US. You don't know. So you just have to be prepared for what nature throws at you. And if you have a plan B and you have some mobility, that could increase your possibilities for people who aren't running a business of staying in town for the eclipse. But if you're a visitor and you really want to see the eclipse, then some flexibility in your travel plans can pay off. But there's no guarantees for weather any place, no matter where you go, unless it's in orbit.
Fred, I think I'm the poster boy for that, having gone to El Calafate, which is probably one of the most southern points in Patagonia. And everybody really made fun of me for wanting to go on this trip to see the 2010 total solar eclipse in El Calafate. And I said, yeah, okay, but this way I get to see a beautiful part of the world I've never seen. And that's what you should do when you go to an eclipse. You make a trip around the eclipse. You spend a week in a beautiful place maybe you've never seen before. And as it turned out, it was the clearest day in 10 years, said the locals. So we saw a gorgeous eclipse at sunset with a golden corona, watched the World Cup that day. Spain defeated Holland. I think they're there. And we had some beautiful lunch brought up to us, and it was an amazing day. Saw the Southern Cross at the zenith that morning, one of the top 2 or 3 days of my life. And I didn't listen to people. I went because I thought it's a cool part of the world. I got a great fare, middle of winter down there. So don't pay attention to what other people say. Do what you want to do, and you may get lucky.
Denise, I want to bring you in and talk about the educational piece of this and how students can really have a tremendous experience by participating and taking part in the eclipse.
Yeah, so thanks so much for having me, and it's such an honor to be with a distinguished guest. And Fred, you are a legend still at NASA. It's just so nice to see you and meet you virtually. And so as we're talking about the eclipse, we're using it as a gateway to STEM. So around both eclipses, this one, the annular eclipse and the total solar eclipse, we are having what we're calling the heliophysics big year. And it goes from the annular eclipse on October 14th all the way to Parker Solar Probe's closest approach to the sun on December 24th, 2024. And scientists are predicting that this is going to be the start of Solar Max, where we'll see a lot of solar activity. And so we're focused on all of the things folks are talking about, those that are in the path, but we're doing a lot of things for folks that are off the path. And so thinking about, we have resources on our Eclipse page. We have a poster contest that we're going to be having. We're going to teach people how to host their own sun watching parties, even if it's a partial eclipse, around art and around music and the things that kind of bind us. And one of the things we really want to do is we want this to be invitational, right? The eclipse community isn't full of minorities. And so being able to extend this opportunity and usher in a new wave of folks that love eclipses and this dance that happens naturally and really take it in. And it's a unifying event because everyone in the continental United States will experience a partial eclipse for both of those. And I think, and Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the next total solar eclipse in the continental United States isn't until 2045. And so this is a beautiful event to celebrate with kids and families, and a great way to introduce them to solar science, to STEM, science, the technology and the engineering, and we're talking about the math of how we calculate the eclipses, and then just pure entertainment, right? We're doing things just for entertainment purposes. It's a free show that you can just walk out on your porch and see. So even if you can't travel, which we hope folks will, but if you can't travel, we have a ton of things that we're planning, and I love the No Child Left Inside, and would love to, whatever we can do at NASA to help push that initiative, we're 100% on board.
Thank you, Denise. And let's right into Charles. Talk about No Child Left Inside and how you got it started and what are you going to be doing with it as we approach these two eclipses coming up.
Thanks for having me here, by the way, too.
Good to have you here.
No Child Left Inside came on a spur of the moment kind of thing when I was working with teachers in 2017, and before that, prior to the Great American Eclipse. And I established lots of contacts with teachers, and many of them, unfortunately, came to me just days prior to that eclipse saying, oh my gosh, my principal, my superintendent, even in some cases, and this is to me reprehensible, my science chair are not letting me outside for my students and me to see the eclipse. What do I do? I said, well, I can kind of intervene. And certainly, as a teacher, I've been a teacher for 29 years, mostly public school. You don't want to, take off the principal too much because you might not have a job. So you got to be really tread water carefully. So what I did was I acted as a go-between between the teachers and the district, and I wrote letters, and I ended up having to write so many. I came up with a template, and I wrote immediately after the eclipse, hey, this is what your kids missed, and they could have seen this. And so in the intervening 6 years, I thought, oh no, this is coming up again. We're going to have the same problems we had back in 2017. So I thought of just, I don't know, I think I was on a plane or something. I thought, oh, No Child Left. I was reading about No Child Left Behind. I'm thinking, oh, No Child Left Inside for the eclipse. So I tried it out in a few districts, and I premiered it in Atlanta at the NSTA in March. And it went over really well with the teachers. They feel like they have an ally. I could be like an ally as a teacher also, as their peer. So one of my program goals is, several goals is to, number one, educate the administrators and the principals and whoever else is in charge of saying who gets to go out or not. Here's how why it's imperative, not important, not even just, it's imperative that your teachers and students do not miss this, literally what could be a once in a lifetime shot for many people. Also, in an age of next gen, Common Core, STEM, STEAM, STREAM, whatever you want to call it, it's almost ironic that we want to defeat those principles and keep kids inside while we're worried about competitive scores against the rest of the world. If you look lately on our scores compared to the rest of the world, we're not doing very well compared to how we should be doing. So I think it's ironic in an age of being wired in. This is the most wired in generation ever, right? 2023. Yeah, I'll bet my house that 100 years ago, kids knew more about eclipses and weather and meteorology and astronomy than kids do now. And how ironic is that you have the world at your fingertips and it's not used, in my case, very efficiently. So I wrote templates. I have templates ready to go in case any teacher wants one. Again, no skin off their back. I'll take the blame. I'll take the fall for this. And I want teachers to realize that they have facts. I can give them as many facts as they like. I have lesson plans that are next gen lesson plans, because of course everything you do now has to be, either STEM or NGSS or whatever. So I have fully proven lesson plans that a friend in Australia actually started in 2012. And Terry got me some of those to get going. And then I kind of tailored them for the US educational system. So everything's got to be based on fact. If you say, well, these kids should be left out, let them outside. But if you don't give a good reason or you can't prove that it's safe, then certainly I'm putting my reputation on the line as well as the teacher. So you have to prove that it's safe. So I love doing this. Maybe as a New Yorker, I like to shame people sometimes into doing things. So I guilt a lot of people into doing things by showing them pictures of pre-K kids wearing Eclipse glasses perfectly well. And this way, well, if this kid's doing it and you can't, so a little bit of guilt goes a long way with that too. That combined with some facts, hopefully we won't have a repeat of 2017 with those teachers that were not let outside back then. So I'm waiting to hear, anxiously waiting to hear results now of how my presentations with their administrators went. And hopefully post 2024, we'll have a much better feedback than we did in 2017. There's a lot more to the program. It's fluid. I'm thinking of things every day. It's just one of those things. I just want to help teachers because I am a teacher and it's frustrating to me. I can't imagine being told you have to stay inside. I would get fired because I would go outside. I mean, I know I would. I would lose my job for an eclipse. That's how strongly I feel about it. Not just so I could selfishly see it. I could take the day off. But why have your kids, oh, that's the other thing. Why have your kids stay home unsupervised possibly to watch an eclipse when you have ready-made teachers who can be their guide, it makes no sense. And I have a big problem with education in this country. And that's another seminar. I hate the irony. I hate the false, the latching on to, old wives' tales, as I say, to misinformation, bad information, bad science literacy, illiteracy, actually. And there's no excuse for having science illiteracy in 2023 in the US. And we still deal with it. And it really makes me upset. So I hope to get this, going on a nationwide level. And I just received good news real quick. I got involved with a prison system in Texas to have inmates go out and look at the 2 eclipses coming up because I realized I'm worried, always worried about kids, but the prison system has done a terrible job of rehabbing inmates. And I want to do it, get them outside and have kind of like eclipse therapy for the inmates. And so this Wyndham prison system in Texas that I just kind of, threw a dart and I landed on Wyndham near Houston. And I think that's going to set a precedent. Now I'm charged up because they said yes. I'm going to go around and pick other systems, prison systems also, and get them involved too. So we'll see what happens.
Thank you very much. So let's do a couple of audience questions. This is probably for Brian, I guess. For people camping, I guess during the eclipse, what's the average low temp so they can be ready if they're out in their camper or out in a tent?
Okay, can you hear me now? Better?
Yeah.
So yeah, as I mentioned before, the weather in early April is extremely variable. It's probably the most late winter, early spring is probably the most variable time of year around here, temperature-wise. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, over the last 5 years, we had highs in the 80s, highs in the 40s. The low temperatures are equally variable, but maybe not to that extreme. But I would be prepared. Let me actually just look. I know the average, I have an average, but the trouble is average is not very average in early April. You know what I mean? So for the last, I have the data here, if I can find it. Low temperatures. I have to read my print. So here are just some of the lows over the last from about 1987 to 1999. Low of 41, low of 41, low of 45, low of 32, low of 64, low of 53, low of 38, low of 58, low of 43, low of 68. So I would be prepared for pretty much anything.
There you go.
Very much. It's a very variable time of year.
So Fred, if it's cloudy, will we see anything at all? I mean, you and I talked earlier that you might see the little bit darker, but maybe not much more than that, right?
Well, there's all kinds of cloudy. There's a very thin cirrus cloud that you can see through versus big black thunderstorm pouring rain, or worse yet, snow. So what you see and what you experience is going to depend on how severe the weather is. If it's totally socked in with heavy clouds, you'll see a subtle darkening and it'll be by and large disappointing. And can be anywhere from that up to ecstatic ecstasy, depending on how clear it is. You just have to make the most of it in a situation like that. At the very least, you can watch it on your smartphone if you're caught in a thunderstorm or something, sit in the car. But that's why I advocate a plan B for people who are in town visiting and are able to do some last or maybe day before traveling. Some people might get the impression that, well, we had a total eclipse in 2017. There's one in 2024. These things are pretty common. We'll see another one down the road. Well, the next one through Cape Girardeau is in 2343. So if you want to stay close to home here in Missouri, this is the whole ball game. So it's, if you want to see it, unless you're willing to travel, the next one is in Spain. After that, in 2028 is in Egypt. After that, in 2030, it's in Australia, which are interesting places to go, but it may not be on your bucket list. So you have to fold that into your calculations of whether you're willing to travel to see this eclipse.
And the fact that we've had one 2017 and now 2024 here is really unique, right?
Yeah, it's extremely rare to have two total eclipses in the same spot within a few years. On the average, any one place on the face of the earth gets a total eclipse on the average once every 375 years. So to have one spot have two total eclipses within 7 years is really remarkable. And there are places like just outside the eclipse path, Memphis didn't get totality in 2017. They didn't get it in 2024. Other locations just outside lost the lottery. So just happened to be in a lucky spot here.
Somebody from the audience shared some data from 2017 eclipse in Jeff City, 17,000 visitors, 6,000 people on the Capitol lawn, just some of these numbers. And then St. Clair has a population of 4,500 to 20,000, but they had 20,000 visitors. And then how do you like this slogan? Get your eclipse on Route 66. Get your eclipse on Route 66.
I'm going to steal that one. I'm going to take
Yeah.
that. I'm not going to give anybody any money for it, but I'm just going to borrow.
I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
I know, but still kind of fun to say.
If I could go back to something real quick
Yeah,
on
please do.
the Jeff City
Absolutely.
experience, that was really interesting because there were a lot of communities that were in the path that were really, really geared up for it. I think St. Joseph was one of the earliest adopters of kind of getting on the Eclipse bandwagon. And I think they had space at an airport and they were planning on like 30,000 people. They were so excited. And then a thunderstorm came and like it wrecked the day for them pretty much. In Jefferson City, we were very fortunate. It was cloudy that morning. We were all kind of like, oh man, and about noon or so, everything cleared off and we had a beautiful eclipse there. But it was really cool to see how many people did come around the Capitol lawn. Like taxpayers in Missouri may not want to hear this, but state government shut down for a few minutes because everybody flooded out of those office buildings around the Capitol and around downtown just to be on that Capitol lawn and experience that. And I think that's something that Fred kind of alluded to, seeing that in those really interesting and unique places really adds to the experience. And I think here in Missouri, we're going to be really lucky. And our friends at State Parks, I think, are going to be at the expo tomorrow. Maybe somebody's here in the audience tonight, but I think there's like 15 or 20 Missouri state parks and state historic sites that are in the path this time. And they'll have some special opportunities there as well. So if you do come to the expo tomorrow, please take a minute and go talk to the folks at State Parks because they'll probably have some really good ideas on unique places for you to view from.
Okay, so what else will, go ahead, Fred.
That brings up a good point about the weather. Even if you can't travel, you have to stay put on eclipse day. And even if the forecast looks terrible and you're outside and it's cloudy, it can clear at the right time. So don't go inside and take a nap. Stay and sit it out and make sure you're there outside looking up during totality, just in case a miracle happens. It's 2 p.m. here in Missouri. It's totality. For 4 minutes in Cape Girardeau.
So let's say, Fred, let's say that skies are perfect, the weather's great. Beyond totality, what else is going to kind of walk us through leading up to it? What the bird's going to be doing after you take a drink of water? We talked about this on the radio today, so that's why he explained this really well. So I want you all to hear it too.
Okay, well, every total eclipse begins with a partial eclipse. And the partial, more and more of the sun is covered by the moon as it gradually moves across the sun. And it takes nominally an hour and a quarter for the eclipse to go from just a small chunk at the beginning of it to the start of totality. Then totality itself, depending on exactly where you are in the eclipse path. I should point out, if you're near the middle of the eclipse path, like Cape Girardeau, you get a good 4 minutes plus here. But as you go towards the edges of the path, the duration starts to drop. And as you get within the 5 or 6 miles to the inner edge of the path, the duration really starts dropping quickly until when you get to the edge of it is 0. So you want to be near the center, plus or minus 20 or 30%, to get the greatest duration. And for this eclipse, that's over 4 minutes, which is unusual for total eclipses. A total eclipse can last anywhere from a fraction of a second up to 7.5 minutes. But the next 7.5 minute eclipse is 150 years from now. But an average total eclipse is a minute or two. So having one that's 4 minutes is exceptional. So we're lucky in that regard here for this eclipse. After that 4 minute period of totality, where all the hoopla and excitement is, you get partial phases again for another hour and a quarter before the eclipse is completely over. So the whole event from start to finish is about 2.5 or 3 hours long. During the first half of it, as you're going through the partial phases, you won't see an awful lot changing around your environment. If you use your eclipse glasses, then you can obviously see a chunk of the sun disappearing behind the moon, and that fight gets bigger and bigger and bigger over time. But you take the glasses off and look around, and it looks like normal daylight. As you get to 70 to 80% of the sun covered, the lighting will start looking a little bit odd, a little subdued, but still a bright day. You can't look at the sun without your glasses. It's still blindingly bright. And in fact, that's going to be true up until the last few seconds. And in that last 10 seconds, all of a sudden, it'll almost be like a curtain is being drawn over the whole environment. And during that last 10 minutes, the temperature is going to start dropping very rapidly, perhaps 10 or 15 degrees. And you'll notice it if it's a bright sunny day and all of a sudden the temperature is really cooling down. And in that last few seconds, when the edge of the sun and the edge of the moon are just about to meet, there'll be one bead of sunlight left that's starting to shrink down. And at the same time, the moon blocking the sun's corona starts to be revealed as a ring around the moon with one bright bead along the edge of it. That's the diamond ring effect. It only lasts 5 or 10 seconds. And it's a little tricky to look at because you've got your eclipse glasses on and you don't want to take them off too soon. But if you don't take them off soon enough, you miss the diamond ring effect. It's really the last 5 or 10 seconds before totality. You can take those glasses off and take a quick peek at it. We've all taken a peek at the sun on any bright sunny day. You don't go blind. There's nothing more dangerous about seeing the sun during an eclipse than it is on any other day of the year. The difference is human nature makes you want to stare at the sun because there's an eclipse going on. So keep that in mind. There are no special eclipse rays that are going to damage you because it's on eclipse day. So you just got to use some common sense. If it looks like it's too bright to look at, stop looking. Pay attention to yourself. It's just that last, and there's a wonderful app for your smartphone called Solar Eclipse Timer. You can buy it for Apple phones. You can buy it for Android phones, Google phones. It's like $2. And what this thing will do is it'll use the GPS to determine where you are in the path. And it will give you verbal cues on when it's safe to take the glasses off, or when to, how much of the eclipse occurs step by step over those 3 hours. It'll walk you through different things to look for during the eclipse. And it will tell you you're 10 seconds before totality. Get ready to take your glasses off. So then you'll know ahead of time, okay, now I'm ready for the diamond ring. You can catch it. And you'll know when totality begins, and it'll warn you when totality is about to end. So it's a great tool for watching the eclipse, both for families and for schools and for kids and for everybody, photographers. Great. And I get it's not my app. I'm not getting any money for it. I know the developer though, and it's a great, I highly recommend it. So after totality ends, there's still another hour and a quarter of partial eclipse, but almost everybody at this point is either in their cars heading home or they're celebrating. Very few people stop and watch the partial phases, except some of these die-hard eclipse chasers that want to catch every moment of the eclipse like me. That's sort of a broad brushstroke of what happens on eclipse day. And there are some other things that go, I mean, I don't know if you've got a lot of flowers open in April, maybe crocuses or things. Flowers tend to close up as it gets dark, as totality approaches. If you look under a shade tree, if you've got any leaves out or anything that has little apertures, like if you have a straw hat with pinholes or a spaghetti strainer from the kitchen, and you hold it up and look at the shadow on the ground, it will project little images of the crescent sun as you get close to totality within 15 or 20 minutes of the eclipse. So that's something else you could do. You can also take your fingers and make a waffle shape like this. You make little holes between your fingers and project that onto the ground, onto a piece of white cardboard, and you'll see the crescent shapes on the ground too. So there's a lot of things to do and very little time to do it all. So it's an over-encompassing event.
Thank you, Fred. Denise, so let's talk about it. When I hear this, it makes me think of it's an experience. So educationally, how can this experience really be taken to its maximum, to its fullest?
Yeah, so part of the things that we're doing at NASA, so we have a broadcast where we're going to be broadcasting, and we're taking in all of the things you all are saying. I'm taking notes, and we're going to have the broadcast. It's going to go longer than the actual eclipse because we know and we've heard over and over that traffic is a problem, and we know it's on a school day and getting the kids out. And if people are busing people places, we have like a full lineup of content that we will have to carry people so they're not rushing off if they do want to watch the eclipse and broadcast it. And then also we are teaching people how to host their own sun watching parties. So in Atlanta, they're only getting a partial eclipse, but we have a whole block party planned where they're going to decorate shoes and learn about the geometry of the eclipse. And it's really about unity and being unified, and that we're all the same under this one sun. It doesn't matter about our race, ethnicity, social, economic status, anything. All those things wash away, and we're all one, and we can all experience this together. And this is just a great opportunity for kids to be really creative. And one of the things that we're leading is with the National Park Service is talking about what happens with animals and what happens around you. And we're encouraging people to watch everything. So look at the eclipse, but also experience the eclipse with all 5 senses. Because I have never seen a total solar eclipse, and I am just so stoked to see this one and it isn't because of the science. It isn't because, that I've heard that it's really beautiful or that kind of thing. It is. And, when I first came to heliophysics, I was like, an eclipse, sounds cool. But if I had a choice between Beyonce tickets and a total solar eclipse, I'm going with Beyonce. And I had someone explain their experience. And I heard the stories of what happens in their body and what happens around them and the emotional and almost spiritual effect that it has. And I was hooked. When our associate administrator, our former associate administrator, Thomas Zerbukin, was talking about, he was in a plane in the 2017 eclipse, flying into it, right? And he knew exactly what was going to happen. He was totally prepared, knows an eclipse can't hurt him. But when the shadow came rushing at him, he said he felt sheer terror. And just thinking about and having where I'm here currently at Comic-Con, and with one of the panels that we're doing is called Shadow Chasers, and it's with Eclipse Chasers, and they're talking about their experiences from tears to sheer joy to fear. And so that's what we want people to get out of this is if it is cloudy, still being around people and knowing that in this moment we're all experiencing the same thing together and being together. It's about being together. It's about enjoying the moment and being present. And you know, I've heard stories of what it was like in 2017 traveling, and people had to pull off on the highway to watch it, and watching them scream and hug each other, you know, right there on the side of the highway. And you all have a shared experience for life. And that's the thing we want folks to take away, especially kids. We want them, this to be the moment they carry with them, whether it's a total solar eclipse or they only get a chance to see a partial eclipse. We want them to talk about it just like they talk about the moon landing or the this or the that. Where were you during the 2024 eclipse? That's the conversation that we want to come out of this. So I think it's a great opportunity just all around, not just, and we are focusing heavily on education, but not just educational. It is the soft skills. It is the experience. It's teaching people to be present in the moment, and understanding that, like, after COVID, after the pandemic, like, this is the event that brings us all together and we'll be all outside for real.
Yeah, thank you, Denise. And that, Charles, that makes me run into you, because this is the same exact thing that you're going to be encouraging teachers to do, the experience, the educational, putting down having kids. This might be the challenge, to put the phones down and actually not look at their phone and look up to the sky.
Exactly. And I as an NASA Solar System Ambassador, I love what you're doing, and I'd love to collaborate sometime and just trade ideas. One thing, just listening right now, I realizing is that I've created lessons for every teacher, every content area, from the faculty of social sciences to the specials teachers, to the phys ed, to the career, what do they call home ec now? Family consumer sciences. I have lesson plans for every teacher in every school. So there's no reason for any teacher to say, well, I really can't do this, or why me? I have nothing to do with science. No, everybody has something to do with science. And this is what's so important to understand that. And what was your question again?
Just how you're going to tie this in with the educational piece and getting students engaged in it. Like she was talking about the experience part of it more than anything else.
Exactly right. Yeah. So unfortunately, I'm not a big proponent of the way kids use phones these days, because there's so much out there. Again, being the most wired generation ever, right? I think it's used for things that are completely irrelevant or useless or whatever. Sure, it's good to have fun, play games and everything, but it's great to be able to use an app like Fred was saying, or to use a cell phone camera video for things like the Mega Movie Project 2017, or this other project I'll let Bob Bear talk about tomorrow that he's doing that will involve shared citizen science. In 2017, a continuous stream was made from Oregon to South Carolina of the sun's corona, using individual data points from kids and their teachers and other people stationed along the path of totality. You put it together, you've got a 90-minute continuous, a real-time view of the corona and the coronal changes that occurred within 90 minutes. So yeah, things can be definitely used, tools, in a proper way. But like, I've learned my lesson now. I don't even take pictures anymore of eclipses. I set my camera up, I'll let it do it automatically, but I want to look at it, because as everyone was saying, I was floored by my first totality. I saw my first partial eclipse in March of '70. Fred of course, luckily got to go down and see totality in North Carolina. I was stuck in New York, and that really whet my appetite, seeing 96%. And I realized people say 96%, that's wonderful. But no, it's actually not. It's a great chem score. It's a great, exam score, but it's a really lousy eclipse score. It's like going to say like going to a music hall or going to pick your favorite activity, and you drive 500 miles to see somebody play, and you get to the door and you can't get in, but you could hear the music or you could smell the food. That's what 99% is like. It's a really bad score for an eclipse. And real quick, I had a friend who flew to Atlanta because I said, yeah, fly to Atlanta and then go on to up farther north, you'll see totality. Well, I guess her family flew to Atlanta and realized, oh, we're in the 97% range. Let's just stay in Atlanta. I came back, and I don't know what they call this, but I did one of these for about 5 minutes. And I'm like, you did what? And she won't do that again. So yeah, there's certain ways to get technology involved. As a science teacher, I love technology, but I'm also old school too. And I like to think that I'm a hybrid teacher. I like to use technology, but in a very rational way that doesn't take away from experience, because a total solar eclipse is an experience. You can record it, you can do lesson plans with it, but in the end, it's the coolest thing you'll ever see in your life. I thought the moon landing in '69 was the coolest thing I ever experienced. And then I saw totality. So now Neil and Buzz are here and totality's here. So it's something you can't. And here's the other thing too. I tell teachers and students and everybody, you can't miss something that you've never seen. And I said, why would I have traveled to Shanghai, 12,000 miles each way or whatever it was? I got rained out and I still didn't care because I was in the darkness for 6 minutes or so. So why would all these people schlep all over the place to see something that you could go 20 miles to see and you don't do it? I said, if it was a football championship, oh, you'd have the whole school going 400 miles to see it. But an eclipse, you can't go 20 miles. You can't rent a bus for 20 miles, which has happened actually. So I'm hopefully about to change that way of thinking too, and stuff. So yeah, there's lots of ways to, use technology. So let's do it.
If I was a science teacher at a school, maybe this is in your plans already. As a meteorologist, I'm bringing in a really good thermometer. I'm having kids write down the temperature minute by minute. Okay, because that's gonna be very fascinating how the temperature trace with the eclipse. Okay. The other thing is, and when we had the last eclipse in 2017, I started thinking about the physics involved in the motion. Okay, you have the Earth spinning, you've got the moon rotating around the Earth, and then you've got the whole thing rotating around the sun. What has to happen to the shadow of that total eclipse shadow to move from Wyoming to Cape Girardeau down to near Atlanta? And so in this case, I was going to ask Fred if he could make a mental picture for us of what is going on with the Earth and sun movement, so that the shadow this time actually comes up out of Mexico, goes northeast right over Cape Girardeau again, just coincidentally, and moves up into Canada. The various movements that have to happen for that. It actually makes your brain hurt after a while to start to think about all the things moving for that shadow to move in that direction.
Yeah.
This is a question that's best answered with math rather than words. It's difficult to explain in English. A model helps, yeah. But what I wanted to say is there's in terms of the comments before about trying to convince somebody that a 96% or 98% partial eclipse is almost good enough. And the analogy I like to make is with the Powerball or the jackpot. If you get 7 out of the 8 numbers, you almost won, but actually you lost. And that's the same with a 98 or 99% eclipse. You missed the jackpot. It's got to be 100%. You missed so much with that last 1 or 2 or 3%. It's a difference literally and figuratively between day and night.
So what are some misconceptions, I guess, Fred, some misconceptions about eclipses? What are some things that people think that just not true?
Oh, some misconceptions are that total eclipses are a once every 100-year or 500-year type of event. And they are for one particular location. But if you're looking at Earth as a whole, there's a total eclipse every year or two. So they're really quite common in that regard, how often they take place. In some parts of the world, in a lot of parts of the world, solar eclipses are believed to be dangerous to pregnant women. Women go indoors and get out of the rays of the sun during the period of the eclipse, or that it's dangerous to eat during the eclipse. Go inside, hide from the eclipse, or that there are some kind of dangerous rays that the sun is emitting during the solar eclipse, or that it brings bad luck to look at the eclipse. Thankfully, a lot of these beliefs are slowly disappearing, less so in other parts of the world than some. I'm sorry, was there more to your
No,
question?
no,
Oh.
that's it. Just curious. I think we're gonna wrap unless anybody has filled any more blue cards out. I'm going to ask one final question for each of you to answer on the panel. Denise, I'm going to start with you. What are you most looking forward to with the upcoming eclipse? You personally.
Oh gosh, that's a lot. Just the experience, to be honest with you. I really want to experience totality and just the experience that only this thing can create. So for me, it is just the experience. Like I'm ready. I want to get 100%.
Charles, what are you looking most forward to?
For me, it's the tradition that was started in 91 and then continued in 99. And then in 2017, my mother and my sister, and then my girlfriend, my other friends joined in, and we make Eclipse family trips out of it. And it's special because my mother has fallen in love with eclipses, total eclipses. So as long as she's alive, we're going to go see total eclipses. I have three places. I have Texas, I have here again in this area, and I have Rochester, New York. I went to college in Buffalo, but Rochester is really doing a great job getting prepared, and I'm helping them out actually with some things. So Texas for weather, here for good luck, because I had good luck 7 years ago, and then upstate New York because I could drive there, and I'm really friendly with a lot of people there that are doing things.
Brian?
So, as a photographer, I'm trying to figure out a good place to shoot the eclipse, and it's not obvious because the time of day, early afternoon, is going to be problematic because the eclipse is going to be very high in the well, as high in the sky as you can get it that time of year. I'm going to have to scope it out a few days before and see if maybe as a landscape, I'd like to put it over something, but that makes it difficult to shoot. But I'll figure something out.
Okay. Stephen?
I think I'm most looking forward to in 2017, I was involved with our communications team. So unfortunately, I was on this thing doing a FaceTime live trying to talk about it. So I didn't get to see all of it. So I'm looking forward to having somebody else deal with that so I can actually be kind of fully present in that moment and really enjoy and appreciate the experience a little more.
Mr. Eclipse.
It's one more chance to bask in the shadow of the moon, to see the sun's glorious corona and see the dynamics of our solar system in action. It's just incomparable.
Would you thank our panelists for their time with us this evening? And just a reminder, tomorrow's the big event at the Missouri Eclipse Expo at the Show Me Center from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Exhibits, educational stations, 2 theaters, expert speakers like this, solar viewing, all kinds of good stuff. 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. tomorrow at the Show Me Center. Thank you all for being here. Hope you have a wonderful evening and enjoy the expo tomorrow.